We are back with a new addition to Gaming Specs. We're going to speculate a little bit today on Shadows Die Twice. Not about what it is. We already did a video on that, and thank you so much for all the comments and the views and everything else like that came from that. But today we're going to talk about mechanics and gameplay features that we hope From Software keeps going in to the next game, whatever Shadows Die Twice is going to be.
Yeah, so mostly what we're focusing on is things from Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and Bloodborne that we'd like to see carried over to this new game, no matter what it is. We're not really focusing on what Shadows Die Twice is, but what it has in it.
Exactly, and Bloodborne was a new IP, but it still kept some of the old systems from Dark Souls, amped it up, made it aggressive and everything else like that, but regardless, it was part of the series in the sense of From Software makes amazing games that are melee combat focused with other alternatives. And so that brings us to the first thing of things that we want to speculate on, hopefully, are in the new game, Shadows Die Twice. And that is that the combat is different and expanded. We want to keep, hopefully, the melee focus is still there, but at the same time, in Dark Souls 3, you could cast a lot of spells. You know, in all the Dark Souls games, you can cast a lot of spells. There's bows, there's throwing knives, there's items and other stuff like that. We're hoping for some features that allow for really playing the field, instead of just ranged or casting and stuff like that, but things that can allow you to control the field, to lure people into things, and really maybe do some pre-planning and set up for dealing with large packs of things. Like, you know, before you fight Prince Lothric in Dark Souls 3, you have to climb up these stairs, and it is just an army coming at you behind all these barricades. What if there was a way to draw them out and deal with that as we go into whatever Shadows Die Twice is?
Yeah, and I think comparing this to another series would kind of put this in perspective. Monster Hunter really has solved the different weapons, balancing them all out, where some are more focused on proper dodge rolls, blocking, and all that, while others are all about your positioning, knowing when to avoid, you know, where you want to be. And I think ranged weapons could follow that with things like the bow and the heavy bowgun in Monster Hunter. You could bring that over to a Souls game where the trade-off is you've got range now, but your avoidance kind of goes down, so you got to really focus on where am I going to be.
Yeah, and I mean, the Dark Souls and Bloodborne games in the past from Software has given us, you know, the straight sword, the great sword, and the ultra great sword. And as you go up to ultra, you really do have to plan exactly where you're going to hit. You are dedicated to every swing with an ultra great sword. But, you know, with the standard straight sword, you can swing all over the place, and it's not really going to lock you into one position, and you're not really screwed. What would it be like if these things were implemented across the board, and now it's range, spells, casting, playing the field, and other stuff like that? Like, an example, what would it be like to set up traps or other things like that on the field, where you run the risk of, while you're setting them up, if you're seen, then you're going to just get annihilated because it takes time to set them.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's a path that From Software should explore, is new dimensions to the combat and the weapons and playstyles. Allow more people to tackle the challenges in the same ways. But what I hope they don't do is where, you know, some styles just kind of make the game easier, because the challenge is an integral part of their game design.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if with bows or traps you could just cheese every fight, you'd kind of lose something.
Yep. Well, and then again, there's that price for setting them, you know?
Yeah.
If you get busted. Which leads us to the next thing that we hope inside of features is there. You know, there's been a lot of speculation about it being a Tenchu game and an assassin game, Eastern style. What if the stealth mechanics were really brought up and cranked up? In Dark Souls and in Bloodborne, you can sneak up on an enemy by walking instead of running, get behind them, and go for that critical backstab or the visceral attack in Bloodborne. What if there was a different way to do stealth inside of the From Software games, where to actually be stealthy, you have to wear low armor and forego all the defense to be able to sneak up on enemies? But if you're busted, you're going to lose that high damage that you would deal out to them, but take high damage in return.
Yeah, so it really balances out. It's a high-risk, high-reward playstyle where you could just light up an enemy, you know, deal massive damage to bosses, enemies, and things if you're successful in your stealth, But if you fail, you're now a glass cannon. You're pretty much 1 or 2 hits, you're down.
And I feel like that kind of goes into the next thing that we want to see mechanics that stay inside the games, which is the parry and critical hit system. I love in Dark Souls the parry system with the shields or the daggers in your offhand, or however you set that up. And then also with the weapons inside of Bloodborne, you got to pull that shot at just the right moment to stagger your enemy back. And it is really rewarding for the player to learn exactly when to do this, especially on bosses. When you figure that out on a boss and you can time, okay, during these 6 to 10 frames that are going by in this second, this is where I hit this button and do this. And it's high risk, high reward, because if you miss a parry or you don't time the gun right in Bloodborne, you take a truckload of damage to the face because you did not do what you needed to do at the right time. Again, high risk, high reward.
Yeah, it's very rewarding gameplay in that it's not chance. You're rewarded for your skillful gameplay. The more you know these fights and the more you know the mechanics of the game, the faster you can take out bosses, the more damage you can do, the more windows to attack you get. It rewards you to get better at the game.
And that's something we want to see go forward in whatever Shadows Die Twice is. Something that is high risk, high reward, preferably a parry critical hit system. It seems to be a staple in From Software games, and we'd love to see that moving forward. The next thing that I want to talk about, given weapons and fighting styles, high risk, high reward, is weapons in general. Hopefully we can find a middle ground somewhere between Dark Souls and Bloodborne. In Dark Souls, there's just so many weapons, it's hard to choose, and you wind up going with whatever build and meta you're going to go for. And you just go for it. Like, for example, a ton of speedrunners use the Sellsword Twin Blades all the time. That's it. No matter what, that's the meta. But there's so many weapons that if you're just playing for the first time through, you don't have no idea what to shove your Titanite shards into. None. Unless you go look up a guide. Bloodborne, on the other hand, only had, a handful of weapons, but those trick weapons had massive identity. And each trick weapon had, its one form and another form, and they were just beautiful to use. They were all kind of centered around what playstyle do you like, and here's your one weapon for it. And it was easy to pick, but it felt like there wasn't enough, even though those weapons were so amazing and had so much character. What if there was a middle ground between the two?
Yeah, and I think the solution here is weapon archetypes, where, you have weapons in different categories of, swords, great swords, axes, hammers, and all that. And each weapon type has its own kind of dimensions to it, and then you can vary from there the individual weapons within that archetype. Like, this hammer might have wider swings, faster swings, this and that. But now you as a player have more choice than Bloodborne, but now it's about picking what's best in your category rather than, well, greatsword's the best, just pick greatsword.
Yep, definitely. So that leads us on to another thing, which has been a From Software staple, and that is bosses. We hope that Shadow Die Twice just has amazing bosses in it.
Oh yeah, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Demon Souls, they're all known for their bosses. We've all heard about Ornstein and Smough and, all the great bosses in these games.
Orphan of Cause.
Yeah.
Bosses that make you pull your hair out. But unfortunately, there's a downside to From Software's boss system. It seems that it usually goes in one of 4 categories. There's a dude in armor, or another hunter, if it's a Bloodborne. There's a monstrosity of a monster in front of you that the camera can't even, get fully inside view, and you're fighting the camera more than the monstrosity.
Yeah, some HP Lovecraftian looking twisted thing.
Yep, or there's a herd or pack, Royal Rat Authority, or, the Deacons of the Deep inside of Dark Souls, and even the Celestial Emissary in Bloodborne. And those are either too easy, or most of the time just too easy, or you feel like maybe you got gypped because you didn't go at it the right way. And then there's puzzle fights, where you have to really figure out what it is exactly the game wants you to do to deal with certain enemies. But what if there was a way to break that system? What if there was a way to throw in something even bigger for maybe a final boss or something like that? Maybe not even a final boss, but what if there was a boss that was more like a Shadow of the Colossus type thing, where you're combining a puzzle with the combat and literally scaling a monstrosity instead of just battling the camera with it.
Yeah, and this could even come in phases where maybe you have to cripple the monster first with combat to then try and find out the puzzle bit. So you're mixing and matching different play styles.
Something to shake the formula up, but still be true, because a lot of that formula is amazing. Some of the hardest fights I've ever found inside of Dark Souls and Bloodborne were not the giant monstrosities, not the herd of the packs, and not the puzzles, but unfortunately, as everybody says, the dude in armor, or just another hunter, another dude, some of those fights are the absolute hardest that I've ever fought. Or there is that middle ground where it's kind of a monstrosity, kind of a dude, like Aldrich of the Deep. Yeah, tons of fun there. But something that steps the bosses up and takes them in a new, fresh direction.
Yeah, like a great example of one way you could freshen up the bosses. Maybe you have a boss that actually starts out invulnerable, and instead, you have to run away and kite it to a point where you can, either activate a trap or something to then set it up in the proper boss arena to take it out.
So kind of going back to that expanded gameplay stuff that we talked about before, but incorporating it into boss fights.
Yeah, like, say you have a big monstrosity chasing you down a hallway. You can't kill it in the hallway. You gotta take it into an open courtroom that you can maybe get behind it and start dealing some damage.
Which would be a really cool way to go about that, which would be, instead of always having the boss arena room that you always are aware of, what if there was a boss that just took the level you just blasted through and opened up your shortcuts, which is another staple we're not going to get into, and then all of a sudden, now you have to deal with that boss inside of the level instead of an arena.
Yeah.
Which could cause some frustration depending on level design, because we all know From Software makes some crazy level design.
Oh yeah, they don't make it easy on us.
Which leads us to another thing here, which is art style. We're hoping that Shadows Die Twice is new and distinct, and yet somehow still recognizable. The biggest things that I like to compare to, at least to updated graphics, is Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3. It's recognizable, the graphic style. It totally is. Bloodborne focuses on the macabre, but Dark Souls focuses on the dark fantasy. And macabre and dark fantasy, yeah, you could say they're kind of close, but when you play the two games, they're very different. Yharnam, for instance, in Bloodborne, is this amazingly detailed city. Every single nook and cranny is purposefully designed. Dark Souls, kind of the same thing, especially in Dark Souls 3. What can we do in Shadows Die Twice, especially if they go for that Eastern motif that we see in that trailer? They, they got that music playing, we see some other stuff there. Pull out that Eastern thing, but still keep it recognizable to From Software's amazing art team.
Yeah, I think what we really want to see is From Software's style come through, but the identity of the game being its own unique thing. Because you compare Dark Souls and Bloodborne, you can both tell that both of those are From Software games, but they're distinct in what they are.
And then the last thing is the storytelling. Whatever Shadows Die Twice is or is not, or whatever gameplay mechanics are there or not, whatever the artistic stuff that is there or not, to me doesn't even matter as much as the storytelling. And you might be like, there's no storytelling in these games. You just kind of blast forward and read items. Bingo, that's it. The communities love piecing the lore together like a puzzle, reading every item description to understand why we're doing what we're doing, and what monster is doing what, and what boss is connected to who, and which NPCs are on the same kind of trail as these bosses, and putting it all together. The community around the lore is huge, and when you have to read it and dig into all the different things in the game and look at all the details in the level design and read all those items to find out what's really going on, and even then sometimes it's still speculation, that's what the community gets involved in. It pulls them in and makes them a part of creating that story, which is what, the lead developers have always been after, which is filling in some of those blanks, but it really grabs you, and the community just gravitates towards it. And I would hate to see whatever this IP is, Shadows Die Twice, whatever it's going to wind up being, become something where they just show you the story or tell you the story instead of, hey, here's the tidbits, here's the trail, put it together.
Yeah, we don't want the old exposition dump with, scrolling text coming up in the ye old time of, we don't want that. We want the story to be there, but almost in the background. It's built into the level design. You use environmental clues, item clues, just, things the bosses say to you, all these little clues to piece together what the world's all about.
And when we do that, it brings us together. You know, there's no greater example than Batya Vidya.
I think so.
I'm probably butchering how you say that, and if he sees this video, I'm so sorry if I just butchered your name. But his channel is amazing. His digging into the lore is amazing. The streamers on Twitch dig into the lore as they play and try to explain stuff as they go. It's just amazing to see how the community wraps themselves around the lore and every little item description, what they can piece together from. So these are some of the things that Sage and I are totally looking forward to and seeing and speculating on inside of Shadows Die Twice, regardless of what the game is or how it works. We hope some of these staples stay in the From Software system, because these are things that all of us have come to love and enjoy about From Software's games.
And we hope you're, looking forward to these things too. And let us know down in the comments what you hope to see out of Shadows Die Twice.
Yeah, which mechanics and gameplay features really have grabbed you over the development of From Software as a company, as they've gone from Demon Souls all the way now to Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3 going into Shadows Die Twice. Let us know down in the comments below. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and then also hit that bell so that you can be alerted when new stuff comes up. We'll usually be posting on the weekends, or at least on Mondays every week from now on. And another thing to announce is that when Dark Souls Remaster comes out for the Twitch, Sage and I on Friday evenings...
Yep. We're going to be streaming this on Twitch, and if we can get it set up, YouTube as well.
Yep, and we'll be starting our stream around 12:30 a.m. Central Time.
Yep.
So for anybody who likes those late night Twitch streams on some video gaming, we're going to be Twitch streaming Dark Souls Remastered, and here's the beautiful part. Sage has never played the original Dark Souls, so even though it's remastered, and even though the enemy placement really hasn't changed, the bonfires haven't changed, he's going to be a complete noob to the game, and it's going to be amazing.
Watch me get my face pounded in about 12 million times.
Yep, so please join us for those streams as they come up when this game is released. We're going to be streaming every Friday night after the release, and Sage is just going to get slaughtered and slowly learn like all of us remember doing in the Dark Souls series.
It's going to be great.
Peace.